Welcome to session 14. We're just about finished. We're getting there for sure. This week, we will explore executive compensation and benefits. We'll spend a lot of time on the controversy of executive comp because it's a major issue in compensation today. Also, in my opinion, executive comp is an example of how compensation programs can go wrong if they are not structured, administered, and controlled properly. And those are the things we've been trying to focus on. We won't spend a lot of time on how to specifically set up an executive compensation program. Those basics have been discussed in previous sessions, and executive comp doesn't stray very far away from those basic principles. However, the components of executive comp are different, and we will discuss those components in this session. I shy away from the structural specifics because it is unlikely that you will be required to have an intimate knowledge of those specifics in any job that you happen to land soon. It's a specialized function, and it's a little bit like trying to teach someone to drive an 18-wheeler when they just received their driver's license. Now, you may be a very competent driver, but not everyone will have to drive, nor does everyone want to drive an 18-wheeler. Therefore, studying that in detail is not a good use of our time. To further the analogy, we will focus on the issues surrounding 18-wheelers on the road and the components of driving an 18-wheeler, but leave the specifics for later in your career. Another reason for a high-level approach is that with executive compensation, like with 18-wheelers, there are thousands of different configurations and variations. Our second topic this week will surround benefits. Like with executive compensation, I won't discuss the specifics of benefit plans because there are just too many details to do them justice in just one session. However, we will discuss benefits in relation to compensation and the total value proposition offered by any organization to potential and current employees. What makes our company special? What do prospective and current employees find of value that motivates them to come to our organization or to stay with our organization? We've been discussing that all semester. What role does benefits play in that critical scenario? As with previous sessions, I've amassed several websites and articles for reference for you to study and to read. They provide the basics, and with this week's topics, provide some very interesting twists to the argument of excessive compensation for executives and some very interesting and unusual uses of benefits. I think you'll find that interesting. So let's stroll around this 18-wheeler called executive compensation and benefits, and while we will admire and visually inspect the outside, we won't begin tearing down an engine or overhauling a transmission just yet. But we really need to understand executive compensation and benefits as they relate to the selection and compensation section of this class. These two components will complete our construction of a process to attract and retain highly qualified employees within any organization. And that, as I recall, is what we set out to do at the beginning of the semester. After this, our next step in the final session will be to look into the future to make sure that we can maintain this intricate process supporting organizational success. Welcome to session 14. Last session, we discovered incentives as the icing to our compensation cake. We discussed how to develop and measure incentives and thus turn an expenditure of money into an investment. This session, we will continue that discussion by exploring executive compensation and also discuss something that may initially seem unrelated to compensation. Benefits are not about pay. Benefits are not necessarily incentives. Benefits are benefits. They are not icing and they are not cake. They enhance both or detract from both depending on their configuration and the value to employees. They are more like the writing or the decoration on the icing. They send a message. Without benefits, the compensation program is plain. It has no beauty, no appeal. It has no message. It is just a cake with icing, but nothing else. Benefits are the writing and decoration on the icing on the cake. But before we go any further, let's discuss executive compensation. We won't spend an inordinate amount of time on executive compensation because I suspect it will be some time before many of you start dealing with executive compensation on your job, if you ever deal with it at all. However, we need to spend some time on it for a couple of reasons. First, because it is separate from the normal compensation programs we've been dealing with. It does impact the overall compensation budget or the compensation pie, so you should know how it is often structured. But perhaps the best reason to spend some time on this topic is that it is highly controversial. Executive compensation is one of those topics that gets people dander up quickly. It provides fodder for those business haters who believe all companies and executives are evil, unfeeling, uncaring, demonic subhumans. It provides ammunition for those who hate the rich and point to the disparity of pay between the average worker and the top of the organization. There are countless individuals and groups who believe that executives are paid too much. I can't think of anyone who believes executives are paid too little. All of this controversy, in the backdrop of people who don't question, at least with any enthusiasm, the exorbitant salaries that athletes, actors, musicians, and other such individuals demand. Somehow, those individuals are not evil, unfeeling, uncaring, demonic, subhuman rich people. They are talented. We want their autographs. We actually pay money for their autographs. We don't want executives' autographs. We want to hang them from the nearest crossbeam. I don't know, but it sounds like there's a contradiction in there somewhere. Now, don't get me wrong. Are executives overpaid? Yes, at least some of them. Are athletes and actors and musicians overpaid? Yes, at least some of them. Do I care? Well, yes, at least some of the time. You see, I care when the executives are incompetent, corrupt, or destroy organizations and the investments of stakeholders. I don't care if they make a lot of money and are successful and make others successful within the bounds of strict moral accountabilities. I don't care if athletes, actors, musicians, and such are making a lot of money as long as they create success within their profession for themselves, their organizations, and other stakeholders. Of course, they also must do so within the strict moral accountabilities. And we all know that last part about strict moral accountabilities, that's problematic for at least some athletes, actors, musicians, and yes, some executives. But if all actors, athletes, musicians, and executives were solid citizens contributing to the welfare of others and using their earned money to make a difference, would they be paid too much? In other words, is there a controversy because of bad players, or are they all just greedy so and so's without redemption? I guess we all have to answer that one for ourselves, but it's something to think about. All of that being said, we have what we have, so let's look at the basic structure of executive pay. And I won't even try to tackle the pay structure of actors, athletes, and musicians. According to the book Human Resource Management by Robert Mathis, John Jackson, and Sean Valentine, CEOs must do three things to earn their pay. Establish a strategic direction, we've talked about that. Build an organization, and obtain good financial results. This reference goes further on to explain at the heart of most executive compensation plans is the idea that executives should be rewarded if the organization grows in profitability and value over the period of years. Variable pay distributed through different types of incentives is a significant part of executive compensation. Executive compensation, however, like business itself, should include an element of risk for the executive. Now, there are a couple things in this quote that we should explore further. First, the quote asserts that we should look at executive compensation over a period of years. Most issues, particularly in troubled organizations, are not quick fixes. So one bad year does not an incompetent executive make. Second, variable pay is a big part of executive compensation. And if that variable pay is based on performance, that sounds fair. Of course, the formula for determining the variable pay and the measures that determine variable pay are all suspect, particularly when an executive of a failing organization receives ridiculous compensation. From this, I suspect the controversy surrounding CEO and executive pay is centered more around faulty measurements, illogical formulas, and loose criteria of success than around the structure itself. Most people would be comfortable with a significant pay base hooked to a large dose of variable incentive pay if they were administered fairly. And I believe most people wouldn't care if executives made gobs of money if they were making positive contributions and all other stakeholders were making gobs of money as well. Of course, the size and definition of gobs would be different for each group. The book cited above, Human Resource Management, summarizes the controversy through the following criticisms and counterpoints. The criticisms of executive pay are executive compensation often does not reflect company performance. We've seen that. Boards give sizable rewards to both high and low performing executives. That's true. Executives should not get rewards and bonuses for laying off much of the workforce. Sometimes that's true, sometimes that's necessary. Total compensation packages are excessive. Many people, not just the CEO, contributes to the success of the company. I'm sorry, there's an error there that says EEO, that should be CEO. The counter arguments include a competitive market for executives drives compensation package increases. Sometimes true. The CEO is in charge and responsible for results. Most of the time true. Sports and entertainment stars, I'm sorry, that's an error too. That should be stars. Sports and entertainment stars earn as much as executives or more for playing games and acting. And that's very true. CEOs earn their money with endless hours, great pressures, and major decisions, and that is true as well. And measuring company performance by short-term earnings and stock prices is insufficient. The argument will go on for a long time and may never be resolved. However, don't let the argument distract you from the obvious facts. Executives are very important and influential towards the organization's success. Their actions can create success or failure, and following that logic, we should obtain and retain the best executive management possible for our organization. Executives are generally very mobile in their personal lives and their careers. They have the freedom to move, and they often exercise that freedom. So market conditions definitely influence executive pay and benefits. And executives will always be paid a lot. In my mind, the argument and controversy may be more of a complaint than an argument for change. If we were arguing, should we pay executives a lot, then the argument may have some purpose. But unpaying executives is very tricky. Perhaps our argument should be, how do we get the best bang for our executive buck, and how do we weed out the incompetent executives? Now, that argument may ultimately bear fruit. So I've said before, we have what we have. So what is the structure of executive compensation? The normal components of executive pay include executive salaries or base pay, which is what we've studied before. Executive benefits, which may include many of the same benefits employees receive, plus additional supplemental benefits structured just for executives. An example of these would include special life insurance plans, financial planning, deferred compensation, and more. Strangely, they are many of the same supplemental benefits stars and star athletes receive. Executive perks. These include benefits such as memberships to country clubs, company cars, coaching and counseling, first class travel, etc. Annual executive bonuses. These may be discretionary formulas determined by the compensation committee of the board of directors, or they may be tied directly to measurable criteria such as profit, growth, market share, and so on, which we studied in a previous session. Long-term incentives, LTIs. This is similar to the previous component, except, as you might expect from the title, it's a little more long-term. A common method of creating LTI is through the use of stock options, and some of our websites go into some detail to explain those further. Exit packages and golden parachutes. These represent special separation benefits. They ensure that the executive is granted certain monetary and other benefits if their employment is terminated for certain reasons. This has proven to be among the most controversial aspects of executive compensation. Some of the worst performing executives walk away with ridiculous amounts of money for doing a poor job, and those make the news headlines. As with the rest of us, we, of course, start with base pay and build on that. Executive base pay is usually in the six-figure range and may even go into the seven-figure range. That's translated as millions. It's a lot of money, but it's a lot of responsibility as well. Executive benefits and perks are more tools of retention rather than tools to incentivize performance. Annual bonuses are designed to provide short-term success by influencing short-term decisions and actions. The problem is that, as mentioned previously, organizations operate long-term and not just short-term. This is particularly true with executive actions and decisions. Therefore, providing only short-term incentives, as we do with the rest of employees, can be disastrous at the executive level. The long-term concerns are addressed through the use of LTIs, or long-term incentives. Stock options reward the executive if the stock price increases over time. A rise in the stock market generally means successful business ventures. A balance of short-term and long-term incentives is important in executive compensation. This is the combination that turns pay or expense into an investment at the executive level. The following website provides some insight into executive compensation, the controversy, and the definition of stock options. It's worth reading. And once you have mastered some of the basics from the above article, the following article makes more sense and is a thought-provoking look at the dilemma of high-paid executives and offers some suggestions as to a remedy. It too is worth reading and perhaps reading more than once. Adding to this thought of high executive pay, the next article agrees with the article above in its belief that success is, as they say, a team sport of which the CEO is a significant contributor, but all success cannot be attributed only to the CEO. Therefore, they espouse the great man theory as one reason for high executive pay. It's an interesting approach and also thought-provoking. The third article also addresses the high pay issue with some specific examples of major companies and statistics about the various results of their executive pay programs. And finally, the last website gives you an opportunity to find the compensation level for various CEOs. Enter their name or the company name, and you can see their base pay, incentives, and bonuses, etc. It makes for interesting reading, and it helps to put into perspective the money involved in executive compensation. It's big money. So that gives you an idea of the structure of executive compensation and magnitude of executive compensation controversy. I'm sure you will form your own opinion, and that's good as long as you have a solid information to back that opinion up. And I would be willing to bet that none of you will form the opinion that executives are underpaid. The real question is, what do we do about it? How do we fix it? And since my generation seems to have messed it up, I guess it's up to your generation to find a solution. Good luck. Now on to benefits. As we started this discussion, I said that benefits are the writing on the icing of the cake. I said that benefits send a message. Benefits say, we care about our employees. We care about our families. We go over and above our competitors, or it may say we do the minimum. Benefits complete the value proposition for employees in the marketplace. So let's begin the benefits discussion by looking at the concept of value proposition. It is the link between customers and businesses. It is why customers become customers or choose to leave the customer relationship. It includes price, service, amenities, and anything that the customer considers to have value. A definition from Investopedia website is a business or marketing statement that summarizes why a consumer should buy a product or use a service. This statement should convince a potential consumer that one particular product or service will add more value or better solve a problem than other similar offerings. Now, getting back to our own company, what makes S&C valuable to customers? Why would consumers purchase from S&C rather than any other company providing the same or similar services and products? Why would customers choose us rather than other options, such as do it yourself? Is it our technical expertise? Is it our price? We may be so price competitive that they can't afford to do it themselves. Is it our warranty? Is it our customer service? Probably it's not just one thing. It's probably a combination of things, and having those things in the right proportion or having them in the right balance. Let me give you an example. Magnificent customer service may not mean much if initial quality of work is faulty. In other words, taking care of errors in installation may not mean a whole lot to the consumer if we have installation errors in 80% of all of our installations. So the proportion of the value components is very important. So as we develop our value proposition, we look at the critical components, price, expertise, customer service, and others, and try to determine which components have the greatest value for our customers. And it's more than just a guess. There's a lot of research to help us value those components. Many activities in our organization revolve around that value proposition. Our advertising is one good example. Look at TV commercials or advertisements in magazines or newspapers or even on billboards, for example. What is the primary value proposition? Geico Insurance is price. Obviously, customer service is important at Geico, but price is number one. Cracker Barrel, looking at the billboards along the highway, features comfort food in a family atmosphere. Price is less of a component in that. McDonald's is fast food, low prices, and fun times, particularly for kids. Look around. See if you can figure out the value proposition of many of the organizations that are impinging upon your life every day. For example, in political campaigns, each candidate has a different, supposedly, value proposition they're offering. Well, why is this important? Because organizations are not just looking for a large number of customers. They are looking for loyal return customers. Organizations know that they can't be everything to all people, so they are interested in the value perceptions and needs of certain groups that will become loyal customers. You probably won't buy often from a company that says, we don't know what you want and we don't care. Here's what we have to sell, take it or leave it. And that company has no value proposition and will probably not be selling for very long. The same thing is true in recruiting and retaining employees. S&C must determine what the value proposition is for their customers, but also must determine the value proposition that attracts and keeps highly skilled employees so that they can in turn provide that value proposition to customers. It's all hooked together. Why is this important in the discussion of benefits? Well, benefits are a significant part of the value structure. How many times have you heard someone state, I'm not making a whole lot more money, but my new benefits are much better, when explaining why they switched jobs? In my opinion, benefits are as important as pay. They work hand in hand. Poor pay and good benefits equals good pay and poor benefits. In other words, both combinations will result in high turnover, particularly with the highest performing employees. Good pay, notice I didn't say exceptional, and good benefits, notice I didn't say exceptional, will result in a stable workforce. A stable workforce has great value in helping us provide our customers' value proposition. I won't spend time explaining what benefits are, since I'm sure you all have a good idea of many of the benefit options and programs. However, there are a few things about benefits that aren't apparent that you should consider. First, the value of benefits and what benefits are valued varies among different groups of employees. For example, Young employees with families may value some of the same benefits that older employees value, such as healthcare and disability. But young employees may place more value on company paid life insurance than older employees. Young employees may value educational benefits more than older employees, and older employees will probably put more value on retirement and savings benefits than younger employees. Stage of life matters. Second, and this is important for value proposition, some benefits are expected. You don't improve the value proposition by providing them, but the value proposition suffers greatly if they are not provided. Term life insurance, paid breaks, holidays, etc., are all expected at a certain level. Would you feel good working for a company that provides only 3 paid holidays a year? Third, some benefits are required by law. Workers' compensation, unemployment compensation, Social Security, FMLA are examples. You don't have a choice as an employer, but they still are a substantial cost to the employer. And that's a good segue into the fourth benefit fact that is somewhat hidden from the public. Benefits are expensive, an average of 30 to 35% of base payroll. For S&C, that amounts to as much as $1,313,500 each year. That's the base payroll of $3,750,000 annual payroll times 0.35. And that is just the average. Some organizations spend much more than 35% on benefits. So what do we spend all of this money on? Well, the following website is a great guide to basic benefit structure. From what must be included legally to what should be included competitively to how to structure some of those benefits are all covered in this primer. I suggest you study it to gain some new insights if you know something about benefits, or to understand benefits better if you don't have prior exposure. You can effectively divide benefits into groups roughly based on the needs they address, and the groups include legally required benefits, which include Social Security, Medicare, COBRA, workers' compensation, unemployment comp, HIPAA, FMLA, military leave, paid plans, medical plans, etc. Retirement benefits, defined benefit and defined contribution plans, 401k plans, and phased retirement plans. Healthcare plans, dental plans, vision care, and wellness programs. I'm sure you're all familiar with those. Financial benefits, life insurance, disability insurance, long-term care plans, education assistance, relocation and home buying assistance upon transfer, severance pay. Family-oriented benefits like domestic partner benefits and adoption benefits to help parents try to adopt children, and child care and elder care. Paid time off, vacation plans, holidays, public service leave, bereavement leave. Public service leave is like jury duty, bereavement leave, etc. This list obviously doesn't cover all the benefits that may be offered, but it does give you an idea of those benefits that should be considered to present a competitive value package to the labor market. And if you don't understand some of these, that's okay. You can look them up online if you're curious more about getting more detail. But this gives you a flavor of the benefits. Providing benefits is really up to your imagination, just like incentives. Whatever you can imagine, you can turn it into a benefit, probably. This website offers some interesting suggestions as to some of the unusual benefits you can offer to enhance your value proposition. And notice, they're not all expensive. Some are simple, but powerful. And their uniqueness gets the attention of employees and potential employees. It shows the company is thinking about employees' real needs, not just the needs defined by the government or the competitive marketplace. The following website article provides some interesting statistics on benefits, including benefits most valued by employees to the most common benefits offered by employees. Compare what you value in terms of benefits to what others value according to these surveys. And finally, let's take a look at the top of the heap. Let's look at the companies that provide the most unusual and best benefit packages. From pet insurance to car washes and oil changes, these companies go over and above to create a successful value package. And it's interesting to look at some of the things that they create as benefits. What's next? Well, now that we have number one, determined what our people do and written job descriptions for them, placed an internal value on those jobs, conducted a market analysis of our jobs and the labor marketplace, we developed or repaired our performance management process. We developed a method to pay people fairly from the top of the organization to the bottom and called that base pay. We provided incentives to help turn an expense into an investment on top of that base pay. And now we've provided benefits to help define and enhance our value proposition. Where do we go from here? Well, we're not finished. We have merely laid the foundation to support our recruiting and selection activities to obtain highly qualified employees. We have also laid the foundation to help retain those valued and skilled employees. If the world remained the same, then we're finished. But it's highly unlikely that the world will remain unchanged. And changes in our world means changes in our organization. Of course, we can wait until the world changes and then follow with our own changes, but that is a dangerous and foolish endeavor. Success demands that we not be the last to change. We don't want to change because we are losing people or are unable to hire highly qualified people. Success demands that we meet the needs of our valued employees before they become critical or as they arise. Success in the future requires anticipating the future. So let's look next at some trends that may impact this compensation masterpiece that we just developed.